My wife 30F has given up alcohol for good and I 31M am finding it difficult to deal with plus 1 year later update. My wife and I have been together for about a decade and we've been married for 3 years. I'd say we're very happy, enjoy spending time with each other and have a similar view on the world. No kids for now, just pets. Things have been pretty great on the whole. Over the last few years, my wife has been working in a hard but very rewarding job and during that time, her alcohol consumption increased quite a bit. She'd usually have a couple of glasses of wine in the evenings at home to wind down. Every once in a while, she'd be involved in work events in the evenings which could get quite boozy too. Her field can be quite boozy in general. They usually have drinks in the office on a Friday afternoon, a glass or two. She never got drunk, but clearly she had become quite dependent on alcohol as a way to let off steam from her career. It wasn't unusual for her to have half a bottle of wine a night, although she'd rarely have more than that. She's quite petite though, so I guess that isn't an insignificant amount. Just to be clear, I never, in a million years, would have classified her as even remotely an alcoholic. Just before Christmas, she told me that she was going to cut down on her drinking and was reading some kind of self-help book about doing so. I'm not quite sure what triggered her desire for this, but I suspect it has something to do with this particular coworker of hers that is about 20 years older and, to put it simply, is a bitch and is also almost certainly a high-functioning alcoholic herself. I reckon my wife didn't want to end up like her. When she started following this book, I didn't think that much of it. She's cut down her drinking before for a while and the new year is always a good time to start things like this. However, a couple of days ago, she told me that she was actually quitting alcohol entirely and wasn't going to drink ever again. I feel awful for saying this, but this really hit me quite hard. I know that it shouldn't, people go through much worse with serious alcoholics and all, but I found myself suffering from a real sense of loss, and then guilt, thinking I'm being selfish for not being supportive enough. She did say I didn't seem as enthusiastic as she thought I'd be after she told me. I mentioned that it was a bit of a shock and, of course, I'd support her. For some reason, this is really getting to me though. Now I know what you're probably thinking, I'm an alcoholic myself or at least highly dependent on it, but the truth is, that just isn't the case. I hardly drink. I haven't been properly drunk since I was at college and even then, I hardly drank compared to everyone else. I hardly ever drink at home, maybe a beer or a glass of wine every couple of weeks. I often don't drink for months at a time if I have no social reason to do so. Basically, I'm an occasional social drinker and no more. Even in those social situations, if I don't feel like it or one of us has to drive or there's nothing available that I like the taste of, then I just won't drink. This is why this is so bizarre. I'm such an infrequent drinker, surely it shouldn't bother me that my wife stopped drinking? Unfortunately, that would be too simple. Instead, I have this chasm of loss forming in my chest. I've told her that people won't really act differently around her when she starts saying she's quit. In my experience, others don't really care unless you're not drinking impedes their desire to drink. I.e., don't be a dick about it and people don't really give a crap. Unfortunately, those rules don't seem to apply to me. I think it may be because those other people are only here for short snapshots of time, whereas my wife and I have committed to spend the rest of our lives together. I keep thinking about what we'll be missing in the future. We won't be able to share a bottle of wine together over a nice dinner, at home, in a restaurant or on holiday. We won't be able to go on a date to a bar and gradually get tipsy while listening to some nice live music. We won't be able to crack open a bottle of champagne to celebrate a major life milestone in one of our lives. Years down the line, when we might have teenage children, we won't be able to give them half a glass of wine at the dining table with Sunday lunch like my parents did for me. Of course, none of this is reasonable. No one needs alcohol to have a functional and rewarding social life, and there are far too many people suffering because their spouse won't give up alcohol when they actually seriously need to. So of course, I'm in the wrong. It's breaking my heart right now, as selfish as that may be, and I really needed to vent. I tried to find some advice online and, of course, this doesn't seem to have happened to anyone else. Any Google searches just gave me hits with advice for how to get your alcoholic spouse to quit. Far more important, sure, but of no help to me. I can't talk to my friends about it because I'm not going to betray the trust of my wife. No one else knows that she's quitting for good yet. I'd usually talk to my wife about any problems I or we have, but I don't want to damage her process right now as she gets used to a new life without alcohol. Hence, here I vent mope despair with a throwaway account, ready for the anonymous internet to judge me if anyone makes it through my wall of text. Maybe some of you can give me your perspective on this. Has anyone gone through anything like this? Update. Today, I happened to stumble across this throwaway. Furthermore, I noticed that it happened to be the throwaways cake day, so I think someone is prodding me to do an update on this. I'd like to thank everyone that commented on the original thread. I did read everything even if I didn't reply to everyone. For a lot of people, this could be something others might be thinking about. I'd like to thank a few people from the original post for their comments, for making me realize that it could have been a lot worse. She could have opted to go vegan instead, which would have been bloody awful. Some comments for their points of view as non-little drinkers and for giving substitute suggestions. Also commenter for saying that our life probably lacked any real problems. That really made me laugh and see the truth in it. There are many more that commented and helped in my original post, but I can't list them all. Oh, also a shout out to commenter. I got my wife to sign up to Reddit for that sub and she's found it really helpful several times over the past year. As I expected, that I was selfish, that it shouldn't matter that my wife was making that decision and that I likely had my own hidden drinking problems. There were others, though, that understood and could see my point of view. The TLDR of my original post is that my wife had decided to give up alcohol for good, had told me she thought she was an alcoholic and so was going to quit. She was not an alcoholic in the traditional sense, i.e. she didn't get drunk all the time, wouldn't drink in the day, but she did have 2 or 3 glasses of wine pretty much every evening after work. A lot of people do that. When she told me she was quitting booze for good, it was a complete shock to me and I felt a very real sense of loss. I really felt heartbroken because I felt like there would be things we would miss out on in the future together, sharing cocktails by the pool on holiday, sharing a bottle of nice wine over a romantic candle at dinner, popping a bottle of champagne on New Year's, toasting to our, currently non-existent, children on their wedding days. I felt like that had all been taken away from me. I knew that this was small fry compared to what others went through and what she could be going through, but that didn't stop it hurting. Everyone's problems matter to them, even if an abstract observer can clearly see that one person's problems are much worse than others. When I googled for help and advice on the matter, nothing really came up, so I want to keep my original post up and supply an update to let others that might go through the same thing that they're not alone. As I mentioned above, some people were adamant that my wife's decision to not drink ever again shouldn't affect me in the slightest. Basically, it had nothing to do with me, and if I felt like it affected me, then I had my own problems. A year on, I can definitely tell those people that they are wrong. In a marriage, at least in the kind of marriage I believe in, you and your partner's actions and choices are intertwined. The whole point of a marriage is to share the rest of your lives together. I had expected and hoped for a long future together, sharing experiences that typically included alcohol. Our society, as a whole, is intertwined with booze. We first met when we were both tipsy at a student bar. Pretty much all the social occasions we've ever been to have involved some alcohol. That's just where our society is. Drinking was, in some ways, shared interest. If you met a partner through rock climbing and you climbed together several times a week, got married, carried on climbing together all the time, then suddenly your married partner said, "Sorry, I'm never going to climb again," you would feel hurt. Like something core to your relationship had been taken away. So, what have I learned in the past year? Well, for one, your partner giving up booze really doesn't matter. You just adjust. I'd be lying if there were times that I miss us sharing a bottle of wine together, but those thoughts are few and far between. It's far more important to me that she's happy and feels much better about herself. She's healthier, has a better outlook on life, and when we are out together, we actually spend more quality time together. I've never been a big drinker, so if we were out, she'd get tipsier way before me, so in a way, we weren't on the same conversation level by the end of the night. Now, we can talk properly throughout. There are lots of benefits too. We spend much less on drinks now, of course, especially at home. We do, however, spend more on food. That's something I get more enjoyment from anyway though. We've been on holiday, we've been to weddings, we've been out to loads of dinners, we've had Christmas together. It's all been fine. I always knew it would be. Other people don't really judge much once you just say, you don't drink. As long as you don't make a big deal about it. My wife still doesn't tell people that she's an alcoholic. The story is still, I gave up on dry January and found myself really liking it and felt better about myself, so I gave it up for good. It's just easier, makes less of an issue of it, and draws much less attention. We're probably happier than we were before, although we were plenty happy then too. I love my wife and I love spending time with her. For what it's worth, I still drink. I didn't drink much before she gave up, and now I do drink less. I'd shared a bottle on nights out before, but hardly ever drank at home. I'd say I had, on average, 2 or 3 units a week. Now I'm more at 0.51 units. I.e., once every 2 or 3 weeks I might have a couple of beers. I hardly ever drink when we're out together. Only if I really fancy it. When I just quite fancy it, I'd usually choose not to out of solidarity with my wife. One change I have noticed is that I judge the shit out of restaurants that have a crappy soft drinks selection or lack of non-alcoholic cocktails. High-end restaurants tend to have several great options and will go out of their way to cater to you. Other restaurants do seem to judge you for not getting a bottle of wine, likely because they make a healthy profit off of alcohol. Annoyingly, we're not doing it because we want to be cheap. We'd happily pay for an overpriced mocktail that's basically just tonic water with a cucumber in. I do enjoy being prepared for my wife now though, i.e. if we're at a function where they're handing out champagne and nothing else, I will do what I can to get her something else. I'll happily be a bit of an arsehole if a place hasn't thought about providing non-alcoholic drinks. There are plenty of people that can't drink for a number of reasons after all, religion, health, pregnancy etc. Places really should be prepared. I've rambled on for a while here, it's a bit disjointed as I wasn't planning on spending loads of my day writing about this. I'll happily answer any questions OT.